Okay.
All right, Matthew.
Those who are interested or attending the event.
Good evening. I'd like to call the House to order on the motion that this House believes, hold on just a moment. This House believes that Bernie Sanders would make a better Democratic candidate for the presidency than Hillary Clinton. In opening opposition, we have representing the UAA College Democrats, Fox, Paul Oliva, and Lena Illig. In opening opposition, we have Brad Hominin, Elijah Kabula, and Sarah John. In closing proposition, we have X, Anthony Patterson, and Titus Patterson. And in closing opposition, we have Pebble 9, Arlo Davis, and Chelsea Kruger. Without further ado, I would like to invite the member of the first proposition speaker, Prime Minister, to open the debate for the proposition. Here.
Here.
Bernie Sanders would make a better Democratic candidate for presidency than Hillary Clinton. The presidential election is coming up, and the Republican candidates are constantly in the limelight. We need a strong Democratic candidate. This is why we believe Bernie Sanders would be a better candidate than Hillary Clinton. Our model for today has 3 points. We are judging from the perspective of progressiveness, but also as American citizens. The motion represents the best presidential candidate for the Democratic Party. We believe the better presidential candidate has 3 main qualities. 1 is electability, 2 represents progressiveness, and 3 is a strong leader. The goal is to determine the better Democratic president to win the presidency for progressiveness and help the U.S. citizens. I have 2 points of argumentation today. First, I'm going to talk about voter apathy, and second, I'll say why Bernie Sanders is a better candidate. Voter apathy harms democracy. First, let me explain what voter apathy is. It's the fact that people, especially young Americans, simply don't vote and don't want to vote. 1, this is bad because the United States is a representative democracy. We value the opinions of our people, so we elect leaders to do that. 2, our democracy only works if it's in 2 ways. If people vote and our politicians represent. Now, our goal today is that we want to have a strong Democratic leader to fulfill the progressive values. 1, it's super important because Republicans represent the majority of Congress. 2, Republicans today are super extreme. Just look at the presidential candidates, like Donald Trump. 3, the impact is that we have a regressive society that is getting more racist and sexist.
So to clarify, you're saying that Bernie Sanders is more progressive than Hillary Clinton?
Yes. We have become a nation of hate and passiveness rather than one of acceptance and action. Now to my next point. Bernie Sanders politically motivates U.S. citizens. Bernie Sanders is good by the standards we laid out in our model. 1, because he has electability. He's popular nationally and according to an opinion poll conducted by QPenn University. Number 2, he's genuine. Number 3, Bernie has strong grassroots campaigns and social media. People are changing their party affiliation and their vote because of him. Bernie Sanders represents Democrats. He identifies with progressive values. He voted against the Iraq War, vouched for same-sex marriage, and advocated against the Keystone Pipeline. Bernie Sanders is also a strong leader. For example, he served as an elected official for 34 years and has lots of experience in the political field. Number 2, he can also work with both sides of the party. Number 3, Bernie Sanders has passed a variety of progressive amendments under a Republican House. For example, he passed an amendment in 2001 that increased health care funding by $100 million. In 2005, a bipartisan coalition passed the Sanders Amendment to prohibit the Export-Import Bank from providing loans to Chinese nuclear projects. In contrast with Hillary Clinton, she is not electable because society views her highly unfavorable. For word association, people generally say she's dishonest and a liar. 2, Hillary does not represent Democrats. She represents the system that people hate. Hillary is not consistent with her views, and she will say anything to get elected. Examples are DOMA, the Iraq War, and the Keystone Pipeline. These are all issues that she has supported and then switched her position on. We need a new type of Democrat to not only win the general election, but become a strong president for the next 4 years. Bernie Sanders is the best candidate. The problem is the lack of votes in our government. Vote. Why don't people vote? There are 2 main reasons. There's money in politics. With the passing of Citizens United, it's a lot easier for corporations to donate millions of dollars to campaigns. Super PACs not only unfairly sway elections, but big businesses can influence politicians to vote for policies they care about. For example, the Koch brothers donate candidates advocating for extremely conservative policies. Number 2, politicians are inauthentic. People who are progressive are dissatisfied with the party. Hillary does not represent actual progressive views and being moderates. People who aren't authentic also aren't convinced by politicians because of how much they are influenced by businesses. This actively harms the Democratic Party in 3 ways. Progressive bills don't get passed, such as women's rights bills. An example of this is Texas defunding Planned Parenthood and going as far as threatening to shut down Planned Parenthood. It harms the Democratic Party by infringing on rights of the minorities. The Equal Rights Amendment can't get passed if people don't vote for politicians who will support them. And GOP's angry rhetoric supports democratic values. And this is why I am proud to propose the motion.
We thank the Prime Minister and now invite the Leader of the Opposition, Elijah Kokula from Team Rad Hominin, to open the case for the opposition.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Elijah Kokula, and I'm proud to oppose. Let's see. First off, I'd like to deconstruct some of the arguments that they made in their last speech. First off, I think that a lot of the speech was really ideological, and that's I think the basis of the Bernie Sanders campaign. It's full of ideals, no real action. Just because they point out that voter apathy among young people is really high doesn't mean that's going to go down this year. I'm sorry, guys. Look, I'm young too. I just turned 18, like the majority of you. I'm now a young voter. Just like you, I want to see the best for our country. Anyone can recognize that this coming election is critical for the future direction of American politics and the nation itself. I want to see our students afford education, our veterans thrive, our economy flourish, and the planet be rescued from human greenhouse emissions. These are truly critical topics, and in light of these stakes, we the opposition do not believe, nor can we agree in sound conscience, that Bernie Sanders is a better Democratic candidate than Hillary Clinton for the presidency. This is not a matter of whether one thinks that democratic socialism is good or not, or whether we want free health care, or whether we think that we should pay really, really high taxes. I don't think we should. In fact, these candidates are similar in what they believe in, and really, it's just a matter of degree. The critical difference is that Hillary Clinton is a moderate, someone who believes in incremental policy change and using the system to improve the system. We simply ask, what are the most efficient ways to deal with these issues plaguing America? In our argument, we, the opposition, prove that Hillary Clinton is the best candidate for the following reasons. One is definitely her electability. She has the highest probability of being elected. This is a well-known fact currently. In every poll, she's leading, except among young people who, once again, I'm sorry, we don't vote. It's tough. Who do vote, though, is women. Women vote. Old women. Vote. She has the majority of those votes. And though that may be hard for young people to believe or understand, because we are naturally ideological, there are good reasons, guys. First off is that she has the experience. As one Hillary Clinton supporter said, she's the most qualified non-incumbent since George Washington. Okay? So, she's been the first lady, all right? She's been the first lady, she's been in the Senate, she's been the Secretary of State. Go ahead.
How does being first lady make you qualified to be president?
I would say just being, thank you for asking, it's a proximity to the presidency, and also the first lady isn't just, wife of the president anymore. There's a lot that falls under the first lady. Under pressure is a happy initiative. They also have to learn how to be good under pressure, under dealing with the public. Please, I'll take you guys later. All right, anyway, getting back to their experience. Going tit for tat, an example between these two candidates' good and questionable decisions is comparing apples and oranges. Still, we will willingly defend Clinton's political actions as they pertain to her credibility as the most qualified candidate. For instance, they claim that she's dishonest and that she flip-flops. Yes, well, I think that she does change her opinion often. That doesn't mean that changing your opinion automatically makes you dishonest. In fact, I think those are very serious accusations. I don't think that they're founded at all. Let's see. So I don't think she's nearly as dishonest as you guys say. Let's see. Second off, going back to her being a moderate. Someone who believes in systematic incremental changes, which means that she can get more done, especially compared to Bernie Sanders. How is he going to work across the board when he's a 73-year-old, how old is he, 74? He'll be 74 when he's in the office, and that's hella old, okay? Here. It's so radical, okay? Hillary Clinton, anyone can seem like a really conservative person if you're Bernie Sanders way over here. You're like way out there. You're a socialist, and then you're over here. You're a Republican, and they like way out there with Donald Trump because he's bigot. And then like this is Hillary, who actually is really progressive in my opinion. I mean, a lot of her ideals are in the same favor as, for instance, yes.
So is your argument that Hillary is progressive, but that Bernie Sanders is just more progressive?
Way crazy more progressive. So progressive that we don't think that he'll be able to accomplish anything.
Here.
Let's see. Yeah, because in terms of policy, the candidates are similar. Let's see. I had a sheet on this. Let's see. They agree in similar things about campaign finance, believe it or not. A lot of people say that, yes, Hillary is supported by super PACs, yes, that sort of stuff. But in reality, you need money to run a campaign. Do I necessarily agree with spending, millions and millions of dollars instead of raising? I think Bernie's ideas are all really good. I don't think any of them are going to get done is the issue.
Why do you think it is that Bernie has so many more individual donors
I think that Bernie Sanders has a lot more individual donors because that's the way that he's running his campaign. Hillary has a lot of money from, let's face it, from super PACs compared to Bernie, but I don't think that questions the integrity of the candidate. I don't think that's Getting back to my main point. Let's see. Also, another thing is that Hillary has been in the system for so long. I'm sorry, okay, so Hillary has been in the system for a long time, and she has made a lot of progress. we have Obamacare. We're really divided on Obamacare, and people, it's a good thing, and we are working towards that. And to elect Bernie Sanders is to interrupt and reset the progress that Hillary Clinton is making. Once Hillary gets to office, she will continue on the progress that she's made with the Obama administration, and that will all be reset if Bernie Sanders is elected. And for these reasons, I am proud to oppose. Thank you very much.
To continue the case for the proposition. Here.
Opposition. First, I'm going to offer a deconstruction of the opposition's points. We heard them say that Hillary Clinton is more electable, and a specific quote from the opposition was that every poll she's leading, this is blatantly untrue. In a Quinnipiac poll that was conducted, it was released February 4th, in head-to-head matchups, Hillary Clinton, the only candidate that she beat was Donald Trump. Bernie Sanders eviscerated Trump, beat Ted Cruz by 10%, and tied with Marco Rubio. Hillary Clinton, on the other hand, lost Marco Rubio by 7% in a head-to-head matchup. Those were the only two options. In another poll, the top few words used to describe her were liar, dishonest, untrustworthy, and even criminal.
Aren't head-to-head matchups, you're talking about the main election, like this is the general election, right?
Correct.
Aren't head-to-head matchups basically, I heard a quote that basically goes like, head-to-head matchups are useless, that they don't mean
In a
anything.
head-to-head matchup, she will be matched up head-to-head with another Republican candidate. That's the basis of a general election. The same poll, they were polled on favorability. Hillary Clinton had a net negative 17% favorability rating. That means 17% more people find her unfavorable than favorable. Bernie Sanders, on the other hand, had a plus 9% favorability rating. That means 9% more people find him favorable than favorable. Now, you're not going to vote for a candidate you don't like unless you don't like both candidates. But from this, we can see that Bernie Sanders is more likable and more electable than Hillary Clinton. Please.
How can Bernie Sanders be elected if the key demographics that he was filling in do not turn up to the polls?
Excellent question. We propose that Bernie Sanders will spark a political revolution, energize the millennials. If he's elected, we're going to have a higher, just a minute, we're going to have a higher millennial turnout than ever before, and it's going to make waves. Hillary Clinton is not a likable candidate. She has a net unfavorable rating. Bernie Sanders has a very high favorability rating, even more so among millennials. So they're going to turn out to the polls and vote for it. Another one of the opposition's points was that Bernie Sanders lacks the experience. Hillary Clinton has more experience, and it's like comparing apples and oranges. Let's break this down. Bernie Sanders has been in Congress for almost 30 years. He's been holding elected office for 34 years. And during his time in Congress, he was known as the Amendment King because he was so good at getting amendments attached to bills. This is when the Republicans controlled Congress. He was able to get funding for free health care, funding for veterans' kids, all sorts of things, progressive things attached onto bills. Hillary, she ran for Senate in 2000 with the sole intention of gaining experience to run for president. She was appointed Secretary of State by Obama as kind of a consolation prize. During her time as Secretary of State, it was a scandal-plagued 3 years, and whether or not you accept the validity of the more visceral attacks on Hillary Clinton, it's very difficult to quantify that experience as a positive thing to her electability.
You keep claiming that Bernie is more electable than Hillary, but you seem to be equating that electability with Bernie being more progressive, which you failed to show.
So, okay, we're actually breaking down the numbers and showing that Bernie is, by the data, more electable and more favorable. So, Bernie Sanders is also more progressive than Hillary, and they made the motion that Bernie is not going to be able to pass his agenda. Now, with the Republican Congress, nothing is going to pass under Hillary either. Energized progressive voters with the candidate like Sanders, and Congress will shift as more millennials are energized, feel empowered, and turn out to vote. Nominating Hillary will perpetuate a toxic status quo of voter apathy, and Hillary represents stagnation in politics. Bernie will start with a revolution that will develop a climate where bold progressive legislation can pass. That's what makes him able to pass his agenda and what makes him the best progressive candidate. Now, moving on from my deconstruction, I want to present one more point of argumentation. And this relies on the crux of relying on Bernie Sanders, the grassroots candidate, versus the stable establishment guarantee. My point of argument is that the stability maintains a toxic status quo, and even if Bernie loses, he will be better in the long term than Clinton. Young voters who support Bernie by a wide margin and lean overwhelmingly Democratic will be energized, turning out in higher numbers than the current very low turnout among millennials. And this will lead to more progressive Democrats being elected not only in Congress, but in state legislatures where Republicans currently dominate. We'll see more progressive governors and mayors, and the increased political energy of the young vote will even sway small but important races like city councils and school boards. Around the country, progressive policies will successfully pass in state houses and city halls, and when people see the undeniable success of these policies, the progressive wave from Bernie Sanders' political revolution will be amplified and carried over into the next presidential election. But this only happens if we arouse the youth vote by nominating Bernie. That is why we're proud to present the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. And now I'd like to get the leader of the opposition, Sarah Johns from Radhaven, to close out the first half of the debate. Here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, audience, judges, I will give you what policies a Democratic president would endorse, but what we are arguing here tonight is how a Democratic administration would pass those policies in these times of division. Bernie's promises of radical change given the system. Hillary and Bernie's views are similar, however, Bernie is further to the left. He is against the establishment. How could a president that is against the establishment work within the establishment to change? Bernie is emblematic of a widening gulf between the Republican and the Democratic Party. In order for the changes promised by Sanders to be implemented in a four-year presidency, there would be greater conflict in the Congress there is now. The Democratic Party needs a presidential candidate that will be able to negotiate and compromise in a gridlock Congress, which is what Hillary's legislative and executive career votes. Yes.
Bernie Sanders has spent 30-something years in Congress working with Republicans.
Well, I cannot. I concede that Bernie Sanders has had a breadth of legislative experience. Hillary's experience is more comprehensive. As my partner was saying, she has had experience not only in the legislative branch, but as an executive, a Secretary of State, and in starting programs as the First Lady.
Here.
And Hillary is the more pragmatic candidate. Hillary Clinton is She has supported Obamacare, an act which granted 18 million Americans health insurance. She is a proponent of welfare policy, and she is a moderate on economic policy, a divisive issue in the Congress. She believes in making higher education more accessible to youth. Now, Bernie Sanders promises tuition-free college in his presidency. However, that is just not realistic. Making college debt-free is feasible, and it would be kickstart in economic growth within the. Yes.
So you think making college debt-free is feasible to pass in a Republican?
More feasible to pass than tuition-free college. And one of the points that's being levied against Hillary Clinton is her changing opinions. However, a consistency in opinion does not equal a quality opinion.
They're here.
If she is changing her opinions to the progressive movements within the Democratic Party, then why are we?
They're here.
And one of the words that was levied against Clinton is that her career as Secretary of State was plagued by failures. Now, I know that that is an implication towards Benghazi. However, after numerous Congress subcommittees have investigated Clinton's role within Benghazi, nothing has incriminated the Secretary of State. And Clinton's career, there have been more successes than failures. She herself admitted that her vote in the Iraq War was a mistake. And one mistake does not disqualify her from the presidency when 58% of the Democratic Party voted for Iraq. She had a role in ending the Cuba embargo and bringing Cuba into the international community. And sanctioning Iran led to the nuclear deal and has allowed Iran to come back into the fold as an American partner. And I believe that it is universally agreed upon that liquidating the leader of Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, was a tactful decision made during Clinton's tenure as Secretary of State.
Here.
This is the Situation Room, featuring President Obama as Secretary Clinton. One of the primary duties of the presidency is handling these delicate foreign affairs. The breadth of Clinton's experience in foreign affairs surpasses standards by a long shot. Hillary Clinton has been told, so she changed her mind on same-sex marriage. However, as the First Lady, she was the first lady to march in New York City's Pride Parade, which is a monumentous occasion. She was neutral on the Keystone Pipeline, but then she advocated against it. Hillary's moderate stance makes her a stronger candidate for the Democratic Party. She would be more successful in the general elections. Now, I know the proposition was stating that Hillary's head-to-head with Donald Trump that has meaning, and I agree. Donald Trump is leading the Republican fold. We need a candidate that will be able to win against the Republican Party, and Bernie Sanders will just further radicalize both sides of the Congress. For all of these reasons, we believe that Hillary Clinton will be willing to reach across the aisle to the Republican Party and implement the progressive change. Progressiveness implies change, which Bernie Sanders can promise but will not be able to implement.
We thank the Deputy Leader of the Opposition and now invite the Member of Government, Michael Patterson from TNX, to open the watercraft for the day. Here.
Thank you. The opposition is arguing that, well, progress comes at a cost, so sorry, young people, you're just going to wait a little bit longer. But have we not compromised enough? The Affordable Health Care Act was partially also written by the healthcare industry. And so basically the Democratic Party today has whoever pays the bills, they decide what happens. And so I keep hearing from the opposition that, oh, she used a super PAC, it's not a big deal. Super PACs and income inequality are a threat to democracy. She legitimizes those corrupt political mechanisms. And if you really want to challenge the Republicans, you don't use the same mechanisms that they use. You try and stop it so that you can dismantle their microphone. You don't say, I'm going to take the money and but change will come. That's not how it works. And so what I would like to argue is that not only is this a debate about Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, it's a debate about the identity of the Democratic Party. And so the Democratic Party today, the Democratic Party today is a party of appeasement. It compromises with Republicans, who, as we can all agree, are insane. If the number one Republican frontrunner says that we should register Muslims in a database and that we should not allow any Muslims to immigrate, that is scary. That is fascist. You don't compromise with the fascists. You stand up to them. And this thing about he's not electable because he's going to polarize the system. He admits that the system is corrupt, and that he's not appealing to the establishment and the business as usual politics. He's appealing to us to stand up and say, "This, I've had enough of this." And so this accusation that Bernie is too progressive, which is a weird accusation. He's not a radical if you really look at what he's saying. He's reasonable. It is reasonable to say that everyone in this country should have free health care. It's reasonable to say that every child from preschool to college, I'll get you in a second, should have a free education. It is reasonable to say there should be no exploitation or extraction of coal, gas, and oil on federal lands because climate change is a serious threat. Hillary Clinton, on the other hand, will say, oh, 500 million solar panels in my presidency, but she does not say, I'm going to keep it all in the ground. You reverse.
Back on your report on campaign financing, doesn't it behoove the Democratic Party to utilize resources to actually get elected to make these changes that you view so important to the progressive movement?
How is that logical? I'm going to take money from these rich people who are kind of progressive, but then at the same time, the Republicans are using the same system from. You have to get rid of that system. You have to get rid of that mechanism. Yes.
You say that we are working within a corrupt system, yet you also say that Bernie Sanders promises to change the system from the inside. How would he go about doing this when there is a Republican majority that has opposed everything that the Democratic Party has been trying to pass?
He is not arguing about changing the system from within. He is arguing that we need to become more involved, and that it's a revolution. Revolutions don't knock on the door of their oppressor and say, hey, I really want you to change. They make you change. And I've been involved in protests, and let me tell you, when there are hundreds of people outside a politician's office, they change their mind pretty quickly. Yes.
So you're saying free health care for everyone is not a radical idea, and while that may or may not be. Anyways, my point is the money that it would take to do that sort of thing would be a lot of money, and in order to make that happen realistically is going to be kind of a big deal.
Yes. So basically, we've spent $1 trillion in the war on terror. Not only that, we are the wealthiest nation that's ever existed, and you're telling me that we cannot afford health care for everybody in this country? Not only that, a government model of health care is cheaper than going through the middleman called the healthcare industry. And not only that, it changes the model of health care instead of treating symptoms for a profit and to a model of preventing illness in the first place. Yes.
Why should we tear down our current model of Obamacare and place of rebuilding, starting from zero.
Nobody,
Not
no,
85.
that is a lie. That is, why would you do that? You already, I'm not arguing that Obamacare is not progressive and it's not a good thing. It just doesn't go far enough. It's a good starting foundation. You still have 29 million Americans who do not have health care coverage. That is unacceptable in this country. And so, build from what you've got. Why would you care? That's illogical. And so what I'm saying is that the Democratic Party has a question to answer. What kind of party does it want to be? Does it want to go from a party of appeasement to a real people's party? One that actually acts like an opposition party to the Republicans' fanatical agenda, or a Democratic Party that appeases and compromises, and then allows for a little bit of progress here and there, and a little bit, but we'll give the Republicans some over here too. And so, in closing, that Bernie Sanders, and he even admits this himself, that he, as president, could not change the system. He has said this. He said, what is going to change the system is us. We are going to change the system. And so we have to stop relying on these corrupt political mechanisms that are a threat to democracy, and we actually have to participate in our democracy. It's not supposed to be easy. He's just making it a little bit easier. Thank you.
Thanks, I'm going to now invite Chelsea Krieger, the member of the opposition from Team Pebble Mines, to continue their case. Here.
Mr. Speaker, we get a lot of glittery rhetoric from opposition, or from proposition, that doesn't actually explain to me how Bernie Sanders is actually better for the Democratic candidacy. So today I'm going to tell you why Bernie Sanders' policy is actually harmful to the Democratic Party, the economy, and the youth as a whole. I'm also going to bring to you why Hillary Clinton's adaptability and experience is better for the Democratic Party as a whole. So, to start with some deconstruction, I think we can all agree with the fact that we think healthcare should be universal. I think we can all agree with that. However, what Proposition has failed to recognize is the fact that they can't actually get their policy passed through a Republican Congress and a Republican House of Representatives. This point has been brought to them several times, and they have failed to address that. They just keep telling us that Bernie Sanders is going to change everything, that Bernie Sanders is going to magically make everything better, and we can all eat pizza for every meal, and everything's going to be really happy. That's how this is actually going to happen.
Here.
Today I'm going to tell you about why Bernie Sanders' policy is actually harmful to the Democratic Party, and that how his policies are harmful to the Democratic Party is because when he's in power and he tries to pass policy that won't go through this Republican-dominated House of Representatives and Senate, what we see is that this will harm the Democratic Party's legitimacy, because we see that, oh, we voted for this guy, and then he actually didn't follow through on any of the promises that he made us, because none of his policy actually made it through the Congress, and none of his policy actually made it through. We think the only way that his policy would actually be implemented is through executive action, which we also think is kind of harmful to the democratic process, because it actually removes democracy from the implementation of policy. It says, oh, this is your new policy, no one really voted on it, but what I say goes. That's what executive action is. So as we see, it is harmful to the Democratic Party because it hurts the legitimacy of the Democratic Party, and it makes us less inclined as America to re-elect another Democratic candidate in the following presidency when the last one didn't follow through on any of the policies he told us that he would implement. So how it hurts the economy. What we're going to see is that, or what we've seen is that all of Bernie Sanders' policies relies on funding from taxing the corporate entities, which is great and all. Like, we agree that they have too much, we think they have more money than they know what to do with. But what we see is that these corporations actually provide a majority of the jobs in our economy, and they're actually really good for our economy. So what you're going to see is if Bernie Sanders is elected, even if his policy is not implemented, the ideas of his policy rely on the fact that he will be taxing these corporations. They are going to fear so much that they will move to a country where they won't be taxed. We see this all the time. Half of your stuff is made in China because we we have labor laws in America that prevent you from making children work for 2 cents a day. Like, that's why we outsource our labor. So that's what we're going to see with corporate entities when we start taxing them. They're just going to move overseas. I'll give you.
Didn't Clinton support NAFTA and the TTP, which are all the things that take jobs out?
I don't actually see how that was relevant to the point that I was trying to make about Bernie Sanders' policy being harmful to the economy in the sense that corporations will actually move overseas and entirely remove themselves from the American economy.
Here. Okay, so I'll explain how that works. So these free trade agreements, what they do is they allow these corporations in America, they make it much easier for them to go overseas. They encourage them to go overseas and find cheaper labor that we can't possibly compete with.
Okay, but like these jobs that are currently in our economy that we already have, that like even with these policies implemented that we have, will actually be removed from our economy, and that's what I'm trying to bring to the House. No, thank you. So what we see with this corporate flight is that it actually harms the economy. And then how does Bernie Sanders' policy now be passed harm the youth vote? So what we see with his candidacy is that he has mobilized the youth vote. And I think that the government has done an excellent job telling you that today, is that he is great for youth and that we all love him, which is, yeah, like I said, great. But what we're going to see is that when the youth goes out and actually casts their ballot and then sees a president who made all these promises to them that they voted for, doesn't actually implement them with their gridlock, then they are less likely to go out in the next election because the promises that they actually get implemented. Okay, now I'm going to talk to you about why Hillary's resources, experience, and adaptability is actually better for the Democratic regime. So, as opening opposition brought you, Hillary's ideological views are similar to Bernie Sanders, but they are far less radical, which makes them more realistic within the actual policy that will be implemented. So we see that when you are if you support Bernie Sanders' views, you actually get more of policy with similar ideological views out of Hillary, because she can actually work with this Senate, she can actually work with the House of Representatives, she can actually get policy implemented. So if you support Bernie and you want, when they have similar ideas, her ideas are actually going to be implemented and his are not. We think that's what you see with Hillary. We think that's why her ideological moderateness is actually is actually more beneficial to the Democratic Party as a whole. We also think that her adaptability brings you a lot of her adaptability is also very beneficial because it will help her get more policies passed, because if you're not willing to move on a subject, if you're very stubborn, the way Bernie Sanders is about his policy, like, you're less likely to be able to actually settle on something and actually come to an agreement that has, yes, some progressive votes and yes, some Republican votes. But we have to acknowledge is the fact that even if Bernie Sanders was to be elected, that wouldn't make all of America magically progressive. It would just make those progressives more happy, but it would not make the entire country want these policies to actually be implemented. We wouldn't see this mass rise up of Bernie Sanders supporters who were originally Republicans going into this candidacy would just change to be progressive Democrats who want socialism in America, and that's for all those reasons we are proud to oppose.
The next member of the opposition, I now invite Titus Patterson, the government whip, to conclude the case or proposition. Here.
Thank you, opposition. To address a couple about you wanted to talk about the follow through, the ability for Hillary Clinton to be able to pass legislation as opposed to Bernie Sanders. The way that Congress works is no matter how moderate her policies may seem, no matter how willing she is to compromise with the Republican Party, they're not going to let it through. Hillary Clinton herself purports to be the legacy of Obama. She's going to push forward with a lot of the same policies that Obama had. How much progress was Obama able to make with a Republican-controlled Congress? So she's not going to be able to push anything through. both Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton are both going to have to rely on executive orders in order to push anything through for their first term. But the difference between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton is that Bernie Sanders has an upswelling of support. He's able to get people involved that have been so disenchanted with the political process that they are going to get involved. They have independents that have not voted once. They have people that have been Republicans now voting for the Democrats. Not right now. Now, the other thing that you're talking about was the economy. You're talking about the harm that a Bernie Sanders policy will do to the economy, when in reality, there's already great harm being done to us now, and it's being done to us by both the Republicans and the Democratic Party in lockstep as they appease big businesses. For instance, well, when we're talking about NAFTA and the free trade agreements that happen, is these companies are able to go to these foreign countries and they're able to set up their businesses there, and those people in those countries work for slave wages. These are not wages that we can compete for here in the United States and still make a decent living. These are the kind of things that are being pushed through right now by the Democratic Party, and that is what Bernie Sanders opposes. That's what he has opposed his entire political career, as opposed to Hillary Clinton, who is engaged with the political realities. That is how she describes her policy. If you want to know what the political realities are in the legislative branch, here's the political realities. Elizabeth Warren likes to tell this story about meeting Hillary Clinton when she was a first lady. There was a bill. It was a bankruptcy bill. It was put forward by the credit consumer industries. That's the credit card companies. It was a bankruptcy bill. They get harder for people to declare bankruptcy. It's like closing the doors on a hospital, and because nobody shows up, there must be no sick people in America. So Hillary Clinton hears about this bill and what Elizabeth Warren is saying about it. So Hillary Clinton goes to talk to Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren explains this bill to her. She explains it. She describes Hillary Clinton as the sharpest student she ever had. She understood that bill inside and out. What's Hillary Clinton do when she understands how bad this bill is? She goes back to the White House. There must have been skid marks how fast everybody's turning around on this boat. And that bill got shut down because Hillary Clinton understood how bad it was. Great job, right? Good job, Hillary Clinton. Thanks for that. So what does she do next? Fast forward to her first term in the Senate, and this same bill comes back. This is the bill this is the zombie bill. It will not stay dead. It comes back. Hillary Clinton, knowing full well what this bill is, decides to turn around and support it. She votes yes on this. Why does she do it? Because now that there's this political pressure on her, now that there's this money coming in and she has to go back to her re-election, the political reality has changed. And she votes yes because she took the money. That's what Hillary Clinton does. Okay, now as far as Bernie Sanders' policy being radical, I don't feel like having paid $2.33 for our health care when other Western countries are paying $1 for their health care is radical. I don't think that us trying to address the highest inequality of any Western nation is radical. Having the highest inequality since before the Great Depression is not radical. Please go ahead.
Paying $2.33 per person for universal health care is great, but how will a universal health care bill get passed in a Republican majority Congress when the power of the presidency isn't vested in the legislative branch, but it is negotiating with the legislative branch?
Oh, sure. Okay, so how this is going to work, as I've said earlier, neither of them are going to be able to get anything in reason passed for the first 4 years. You didn't really address that. Bernie Sanders is going to do this. Hillary Clinton, it's all about her experience, right? It's all about Hillary Clinton. What kind of person is she? What is she going to be able to do? It's all about her. And the executive branch, as you just said, doesn't really have the power to push reasonable legislation through at this point with the Republican Party having control of it. Bernie Sanders isn't about himself. It's about us. It's about the people. It's about us coming together and uniting and finally starting from the bottom at the local branches and working our way up. And once we have the opportunity, we will vote in a new House. We will vote in a new Senate, and that's how legislation is passed, by changing the party itself.
Okay, so you're telling me that, neither candidate is actually going to get any progressive plans passed, so you're essentially, saying he's really not going to do anything until the House of Representatives can actually change itself, which we can't really rely on America to do, because they might vote in Republican candidates?
So what did I just say? I said both. Neither Hillary nor Bernie will be able to get anything done. The difference is Bernie Sanders is a candidate for hope, that we can come together and we can inspire ourselves to change things, as opposed to Hillary Clinton who's saying, no, we can't. This is the system. These are the mechanisms we have. We have nothing else. We just need to put up with it. We need to take the money. We need to let the businesses control our politics. We need to compromise our ideals with people who are so far right they refer to Mexicans as rapists, and they want to document every Muslim in this country. Those are not people to appease. Compromise our ideals for. What do we want the Democratic Party to stand for? We can't rely on the legislation. We can't rely on the judicial branch because they allowed something as corrupt as Citizens United to poison our democracy and erode it. The executive branch, we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity as a people to make a real change in the executive branch. But even if we don't have that opportunity, even if we squander it on Hillary Clinton, we can still come together. We can still start at the bottom, and we can work our way back. Thank you.
We thank the government whip and now invite the opposition whip, Arlo Davis from Title 9, to continue and actually conclude the debate as a whole.
Here, here.
Here,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, we've heard a lot today about both sides of the party, mostly about Hillary. We're here to talk about both of them and how the motion is that Bernie Sanders could make a better Democratic presidential candidate than Hillary Clinton. But what our opposition, what the proposition has failed to prove to you today is this motion. So, remind everyone about how Bernie Sanders is going to harm the economy, overall ruin the faith in the democratic system that we use here in America, even if he is elected. And figure out what we're going to do. Back.
So I think opposition was talking about how we're all apathetic and the young people, we can't do anything. So is there faith in the democratic process now, or is Bernie just going to make that happen?
Okay, well, what we were saying earlier is that even if he gets elected under the Democratic ticket, he's not going to be able to get all of the stuff that he's saying he's going to do passed because of the Republican Congress. Therefore, all the young people that he's trying to get out and mobilize to vote are going to see that their vote for the Democratic Party isn't going to affect the kind of change that that candidate says he's going to do. So it'll harm the democratic process. So that's what that is. Harming the economy. The stuff that Bernie Sanders is talking about under the Democratic ticket is just so not democratic that it would take huge, big money, which is the point that I was trying to make earlier, to make happen. Yeah, healthcare is cool. I like healthy people, but the kind of changes that he's talking about making are going to be so expensive that the point we were bringing up is that it will create corporate flight and it will create only more people working for like just nothing, which is not what we want to see happen. We want to see our American economy strengthened with people that know what they're doing and have the experience, like Hillary Clinton, because they've had the experience. Secretary of State, U.S. Senate, First Lady, twice. Those are all really huge things. She's got the track record. She's got the adaptability. She's got the resources there, and she's running under issues than Bernie. So they're a better Democratic candidate for the presidency. It's very simple. Not our opposition has been talking about the upswelling report and bringing the healthcare over, but that upswelling report, every candidate does that. So every candidate wants to do it for you, but it just doesn't. And that's all I have.
We thank the opposition win for what was a wonderful debate. Let's everyone have a round of applause for the people up there.